Hello and welcome to another episode of Found It Fetched It. This week we're going to be talking all about the energy you bring is the behaviour you get with your gun dog. Joining me for this week's episode is LWDG group expert Claire Denyer. How are we today, Claire?
I'm very good, thank you, Jo, and it's great to be here recording another podcast.
This is going to be a really good one because we're going to cover some stuff that people may know or may be able to enjoy us telling stories about, but also help people understand what their dog is trying to tell them. So let's start off by talking about how our energy can affect our dog in training. Tell us a little story, Claire, of where you've easily seen how people's behaviour has affected their dog.
Absolutely. So very recently in one of my classes, lovely class, gorgeous dogs, lovely people, and everyone's really light-hearted. And I think, as we talked about in other podcasts and masterclasses on the society, the energy and the feeling people have can affect the training. And the more relaxed you feel training your dog, generally the more relaxed the dog feels. It's all very fluid. So we had this little thing happen in the class. I'll call it a thing until I've told the story. And one of the dogs was a little bit cheeky, shall we say, but it was quite funny as an onlooker. So what happened was other people in the class started giggling because they thought it was quite humorous. And even the owner themselves found it humorous, so giggled. And I have to say, even I giggled a little bit. But then I looked and I saw the dog's body language and I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, guys, don't laugh. The dog is picking up on the laughter, picking up on the energy. And unless we want this poor handler to have this repeated in future exercises, we all need to not laugh because the dog was picking up on this. And this is a really young, fun-loving dog. And you could literally see that the dog was like, everyone's really amused by what I'm doing. This is amazing. And I was like, okay, this isn't something we want to repeat. So we should all be quiet now and work through the process and the problem. And so I think we have to be really mindful. And it just sparked a conversation with that group because they were then really intrigued as to, okay, so do the dogs know when we laugh that we find something funny? And I'm like, absolutely. Think about how much time we spend teaching our dogs to read our body language, to read our facial expressions, to understand our tone of voice. And so it only makes sense that the dogs can understand or can interpret laughter and that kind of energy that goes with laughter as something we like.
It's really interesting when you're talking about energy because, as many people know, Arthur's a bit of a little wee, bless him. He gets excited about everything. But in order to calm that down, I've been saying to people like, don't look at him, be really calm. When you see he's chilled out, go over and say hello. And it's definitely worked. But then my husband, who loves him to death, is very excited around him. The minute he comes through the door, he hasn't got through the door and he's like, Arthur, like super excited, peeing like a fountain. And I'm like, do you know what I tell everybody else? Come through the door, calm. So now I've got a dog that's like 99.9% pee proof. And like just one person who shouldn't be doing this to him, like so excited to see him. Now I love it. I love that Matt is so excited to see Arthur, and I love that Arthur is so excited to see Matt. I don't love constantly washing washable rugs, but it's what we don't realize we're doing it, do we?
Exactly. And that's exactly it. And I think it's so easy. When a dog does something that is cute or endearing or goofy, our natural reaction is to laugh and to be like, oh, that's so sweet. But we have to think about what the dog's learning from our reaction and our behavior that's in relation to the behavior they've just given. And whether we are simply accidentally either reinforcing or rewarding that behavior that they're doing in that moment by our reactions. And I think it's just having to be that little bit more mindful because the dog's kind of like going, yeah, you really like this, and we might like it in that moment because in that moment it's endearing, but in 6 months time it might not be something that we find endearing and funny at all. And like you say, you don't want to be mopping up Arthur's wee when he's excited for another 6 months. So you have to think about this sort of thing and the energy that we bring.
Yeah, and like I have found by telling everybody because of the pee incident, not to look at him, not to be thing, that now when other people come into space, like we took him to a barbecue for the first time the other day, he was quite chilled and nobody wanted nothing to do with him. Because as far as he's concerned, people don't always want something to do with him. And I'm thinking, yes, this is great. I'm never going to have him pull in a park to go and see somebody because they make a fuss. The only person he's going to want to pee all over is my husband, which is my husband's problem. I've told him better. But also, I put something up the other day, and me and you have chatted about this at length, is like when the old-fashioned Spaniels and Labradors were worked, they'd come out, they'd work, and then they would go back into their kennels and they'd be looked after and cared for. But you did not need to manage your behavior around them 24/7. Now, as owners, we have a responsibility to manage our behavior as much as the dog has a responsibility to manage theirs.
Yeah, 100%. It's actually harder. And I think it's recognizing and understanding that. I think this is where there's now such a big emphasis on having the dog having an off switch or settling and all of that sort of work around that. Because, yes, you're right. Traditionally, most gun dogs were kennelled dogs. And some still are, but so many more people now have gun dogs that live in the house, or gun dog breeds or working breeds, full stop, that live in the house. But when they were in kennels, obviously that's a natural off switch. They didn't have things to occupy them. They didn't have toys laying around. It was just an off switch, which was why I believe they're so focused when they come out, because this is the thing. This is what we do. Whereas in the house, they've constantly got stimulation. They've constantly got our voices. They're listening. They're interacting. We don't let them get the same amount of rest that they get when they're kennelled. So we have to self-manage ourselves to ensure that we're giving the dogs the downtime they need. And equally, it's them being mindful of what the dogs are learning during that interaction in the home. And this is where we talked about before, where this is where some of the work that you do on the training field comes unraveled, because without realizing it, are undoing some of it in the home. Like, we allow the dog to not come on the recall, and we allow the dog to break a stay, because we're trying to use obedience to manage instead of letting the dog just be. Does that make sense? I think it does.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I can remember everybody has a little argument, even though Mr. P is perfect, we have our sort of discussions, shall we say. And when the kids were younger, we'd be like, hold this moment, let them go do whatever they do, and then we'll have our conversation. But nobody says, let's not argue in front of the dog. Like, you don't do that. So you don't see, like, the dog picks up on your negative energy when you're having a discussion about something and, you're getting quite wound up, or if you're flustered, or if the delivery man has just dropped off the wrong thing, broken, and you get, oh my God, and you're on the phone trying to sort things out. Like, the dog's watching everything. He's like the silent camera in the room, that he's like the big brother, but he's not like broadcasting it to the world. He's just deciding how he will interact with you going forward based on the fact that you don't even know he's watching you.
It's actually a little bit scary when you really think about it like that, because you can put hours and hours into training on the field, but you could be undoing so much of that just by the things that are happening, and by the dog starting to learn what you mean, what you don't mean, what you enforce, what you don't enforce, what you reinforce, what you don't reinforce. And so the dog is just learning with every interaction. And this is where things like laughter, they learn about laughter because they're around us in the home when we're laughing, and we might laugh at something in the home, And the dog's like, oh, you know, the dog knows that laughter and smiling is your happy thing. So it is kind of that sort of is what makes us understand that the dog will find that reinforcing, because our dogs want us to be happy. They don't want us to be grumpy and moody with them. They want us to be happy. So things that make us laugh, the dog is going to find reinforcing.
It can be anything as well, isn't it? Like I can remember not so long ago, and I don't know whether he's doing it because we laugh, but I'm pretty much sure he's done it since that one day. Goose was sitting on the sofa arm, and he went up like a meerkat to look out the window to see what somebody was doing. And we were like, oh, isn't that cute? And now, I don't know whether that time he decided, oh, I like sitting like this. Now he will sit like that for like 5 minutes at a time, watching out the window. There's nothing outside. I don't know what he's watching, but he loves it. And I'm just like, did we reinforce it? Did we make him think that was a brilliant position to sit in? I don't know, because like you see these things sometimes, right? And you see like these little poodles that walk on their back legs with a backpack, and we all know that that's not appropriate for that dog, and that dog shouldn't be doing it, and it's not good for their back, and all the reasons. But that dog might have been taught and rewarded for being like that for a little bit, and now is just doing that all the time.
Well, it's possible that Goose, you said about the meerkat at the window, it's quite possible that what he really liked was the attention that he got from you in the moment when he did it. So he thinks, if I do this, they're going to give me that attention that I like. It didn't even take necessarily laughter. It's just that it got some attention that actually he quite enjoyed. So he's like, that's amazing. If I do this, they're going to pay me attention and everyone's going to look at me and I'm so gorgeous.
Yeah, and probably you're thinking about it when you've said that. I think it's happened since the pup came. So now it's like the new baby, isn't it? Everybody wants to give the new baby attention. So the child that's slightly older is not getting that. He probably does feel a little bit like that. But this reminds me as well. Have you seen an episode of The Simpsons? The dog goes up and covers something on the screen, and everybody's like, "Ah!" And then the cat goes to do it, and everybody screams at the cat. It's the same behavior, but the response is completely different. And either it's the cat and the dog, but whichever way around, I'm sure somebody correct me. But it's the same behavior and we give a different response. And that can happen with our dogs, can it? Like you just said, the laughter that the dog picked up on this time, next time, the owner could be having a bad day and go, enough of that, or whatever. And the dog be like, I'm really lost. Your emotions told me last time, this is perfectly acceptable.
Yeah, and I think that's where so much confusion and conflict can come for a dog. If we start changing like that, 1 minute it's okay, the next it's not. Take jumping up as a great example of that. Jumping up. When puppies, the little puppies, and half the people it meets encourage it to climb up them, that is reinforcing jumping up essentially. And then somebody else comes along and they don't like it and they get really grumpy, and the dog's like, I just don't know how to win this because they love it, you don't like it, you know. And 1 minute the owner's like, oh, you're really cute, yes, come up and do this, and then they get to 22 kilos or whatever, and all of a sudden it's unacceptable to do that anymore, and so then they're getting told off for it. And it's like, I say to people all the time, be really mindful, really careful about what you teach and what you reward, because if you're not going to want your dog to do it as an adult dog, don't let them do it as a puppy, because then you're just being really unfair to the dog and, you know, changing the rules. You're changing the rules. And it's like, the dog doesn't understand that they were a puppy and weighed like 6 kilos. And now they're like 22, 23, 24 kilos. And all of a sudden, that's not okay anymore. You told the dog it was fine. So then you've got to re-educate the dog. So it's just being mindful, isn't it, about the things you reward, the things you encourage, whether you mean to or not. Are they things you want to be lasting? Are they things you want to be repeated?
I think as well, like we see this in the group with regards to like heel work. I think indirectly, we all, including me, tend to let our pups drag us a little bit because we can't feel them. You know, 2 kilo pulling you doesn't feel like a lot. 20 kilo pulling you is like you take my arm out of my socket. So we did it and we didn't say no to it, and then we are sending completely different cues for the same behavior. So the energy we keep bringing to them is fluctuating so much they probably think, oh, well, I'm just not going to listen to you because you can't make up your own mind.
100%. And I say this to our Puppy Foundation clients all the time. So like when they come to puppy class and we are very, very passionate, I think is the right word. It means a lot to us that we educate owners on how what they're teaching the puppies as puppies is so important for them future life as an adolescent and then as an adult dog. And I always say when people arrive at puppy class, do not allow your puppy to pull you on the lead to meet the other people and the other dogs. That's just going to set your puppy up to believe that that's how they get to meet people and dogs, is they pull you on the lead to get there. You know, we're very careful with how interactions happen with puppies. So always looking at the energy levels. So again, this comes back to energy, the energy levels of the individual puppies, whether one puppy looks nervous, whether one puppy looks too boisterous, are they evenly matched? Are they correct to meet and politely greet? The lead should always be loose. You never want puppies meeting on tight leashes. That can lead to lead reactivity and frustration later in life. So all of that stuff all just comes from that little bit of energy of what's happening in that moment, which has a lasting effect and is an education to the puppy and how they're going to be as an adult dog. So we actually go through how to teach puppies how to meet politely, how to behave, how to recall away from other puppies and other dogs, how to meet people politely. So it's all about teaching and getting those right energies in place, and also looking at the individual puppy's body language. Well, that one really doesn't want to meet anyone else, so he doesn't have to. There's no pushing that puppy into it. And then you might have the bully puppy who's like, I'm just going to beat everybody up. And it's like, okay, let's teach him there are other ways of interacting. So, you know, energy is everything, both with us and also with the puppies or the other dogs around. So it's understanding the body language, it's understanding the behaviors that you're seeing, the energy that you're seeing, and it's those little nuances, like, you know, things that are happening with the dog's ears, their tongue, their eyes, their tail, their movement. All of these little things all create this like bubble of energy. I just really babbled, didn't I, there, Joe?
No, not at all. And when you're talking, it's making me think a lot around. It is difficult. Humans, I think, are quite easy on the most to read. Like you get some people and you say, you know, they're deep as the ocean. You just can't read anything, like poker face. But most people are quite easy to read. They, even if they're annoyed with you, you can tell they're annoyed with you. If they're happy with you, you can tell, even if their face is not doing well. We're very good as humans at reading all this. But we aren't very good, I don't think, at reading dogs' behavior and dogs' emotional energy, because with a dog, it's so subtle, it's so like little. It's really hard for us to connect when their energy has changed. Like, you know, that dog over there, I'm finding them, you know, aggressive. Like the dog, our dog might be showing us that, but we just really are not reading the room.
Yeah, I had this, so I can tell a little story about what happened to me with Rose just over a week ago. Well, if I rewind a couple of weeks ago, we went and did a working test, novice working test. Rose was amazing. She was on fire. We got an award. I was delighted. Yay! Which is a big thing for me. As everybody that listens to the podcast regularly knows, that's a big deal for me. Working tests, my energy at working tests is not great. So this was a big deal. Fast forward 1 week, second novice test, and it was a really hot day. I think it was like 26 degrees. Rose has never done well in the heat, like never. So when we got there, she was quite huffy puffy. I don't think that's a technical term, but she was panting, shall I say? She was panting quite a lot. I had water on me. I had oral aids, so things to like give her hydration, had an energy bar. Anyway, first working test. Before the test even started, she had laid down. Now, to most people, that's just a dog laying down. I was literally like, okay, this isn't a good sign. She's just laid down when she should be sitting up, alert and ready for this retrieve. And I started panicking in my head. So my energy was clearly changing in that moment because I'm like, my dog's not right and I don't know what's wrong. That was the first thing in my head. And anyway, when I sent her on the retrieve, she kind of just meandered, then fell down a hole, which wasn't ideal, got herself out of the hole, and she just didn't want to do the work. Anyway, cutting what could be a very long story short, I knew something wasn't right with my dog. And I spoke to one of the stewards after the second test, and I spoke to the organizer and I said, I'm thinking I might withdraw from the test and not continue because my dog's just not right. Her energy's not right. So we're going back to that word energy. I said her behavior is not right. She's laying down. She's not comfortable. I don't know what's wrong with her. You know, there was no physical signs of pain. There was no physical things going on other than the panting and the laying down. But the behavior was wrong. The towel wasn't its usual self. The towel was down. Anyway, long story short, gave her a break, decided to get a vet check, put my behaviourist head on, put my behavioural trainer head on, and I was like, I'm going to get a vet check. There's something not right with my dog. Can't put my finger on it. Her behaviour is out of sorts in multiple ways. So like over a week, I kind of like was monitoring her, took her to the vets, and she's got a back injury. So no signs of lameness or anything like that. It was all behaviour, body language, and her just trying to communicate with me through other ways that there was something wrong with her. So she's on pain relief at the moment. She looks much more comfortable. She's got a physio appointment booked. And it's felt like there's nothing like untoward going on. But it's knowing your dog, isn't it? Trusting your gut in that moment and just going, something's not right. You know, had she been lame, I could have just gone, oh, my dog's limping. She's lame. But there wasn't any of that. So, you know, this is just where really trusting your gut and reading your dog is so important.
It's really interesting as well, like knowing when enough's enough, because yesterday I was training with Sam. When this comes out now, that'll be like a couple of weeks ago, but I was training with Sam with a pup and I was like, oh, how much is he going to be able to do? He's like, he's a baby. And he was really, really focused and really involved. And then I don't think I didn't notice, but I sort of did, but Sam put a finger on it. He literally stopped being focused and went into full on whizzing round, but not like zoomies. It was almost like, I'm ignoring you and I'm going to knock my brain off by running around. Now, you'd think like tired, mentally tired means I'm tired, I'm not going to do anything. His way of dealing with it was just to run madly. And I thought, isn't that funny? Like, I'm watching him now. We are, I don't know how many years, nearly a decade into doing this together. And I've learned so much from you guys. And like, I already know, right, log that when he's had enough, he'll start acting a little bit like the fool. And I'm getting more energetic, not less energetic. Whereas Rex, his older dog, when he's had enough, he's just a little bit like, he sits down, like you just said, he laid down with you and he's just like half speed going out for the next retrieve. And he's just like, enough now, please. And I know that look on him, but it's knowing what each dog does, because we say it all the time, don't we? Every dog is different. What does your dog look like when it's tired? What does it look like when it's at mental capacity? What does it look like when it's scared?
Yeah, that is so true. And what you said is absolutely bang on. And I say this a lot, especially with young adolescent dogs, especially. They can't do long durations of training. So if they come to like a group and the group class is structured well enough that they're getting plenty of breaks, they can train for longer because they're having breaks. When I say breaks to people, I have to explain, don't put your dog in a sit. That's not a break. That's an obedience command. Let the dog relax. If it wants to lay down, let it lay down. Let it just chill. But if they come for a one-to-one, there's less breaks generally. Just, you know, you'll have breaks while you're talking through something. But the duration that a young dog, and even actually some adult dogs, cannot do the duration that people want to do. So people want to book an hour's one-to-one for a dog. there are not many dogs that can do an hour back-to-back training. And also the quality of the training goes down as the dog becomes mentally tired. So like you just said, Joe, with some adolescent dogs or puppies, they might get zoomies, they might start biting the lead, they might start grabbing at the owner's trousers and things like that, because they're mentally fried. The brain is fried. Physically, they could probably go for much, much longer, but mentally the brain is done. And so they either start to exhibit unusual or kind of like childish, puppy-like behaviors, like zoomies and things, or you might find they start to make really silly mistakes in the training. So I'm always watching the client's dog. And if I see that that dog's gone from just doing something well to starting to make mistakes, I'll log that and I'll be like, okay, your dog's getting mentally tired. We need to start winding the session down. We need to do something the dog's going to find easier so that we leave it on a real strong positive. And so, yeah, it's reading those things. So it's like our energy, the dog's behavior, our behavior, and understanding that not all dogs are the same in that respect. And it's learning what your individual dog does when it is either tired or stressed, or like you said, fearful. The dog will have different behaviors that it will express and that you will see based on those things.
Are there any sort of signs that tell you a dog is feeling not calm? So they're not being like chilled and aware, but they're more like, I'm getting quite scared, but I'm not actually showing there in a hugely emotional way.
Yeah, so it really does vary from dog to dog, but things that I'm eyes, are they fixating with things? Are they looking anxiously around? The tail position, knowing the difference in the wags, whether it's a high wag, a low wag, a relaxed neutral wag, reading what the dog is kind of, whether it's looking at the handler a lot as well. You see some dogs, if they have a really good bond with their handler, some dogs, when something's starting to bother them, they will keep looking at the handler as if they're like, help me. And some handlers are not even aware the dog is doing that. So it's looking for these little things. It's looking for, some dogs will go very still. Some dogs will be really fidgety. So it's just getting to know your dog and understanding what sort of behaviors does this dog exhibit when it is maybe tired, or when it is slightly stressed, when it is overwhelmed, when it is fearful. So it's getting to understand. All of my dogs do different things under different circumstances. And, you know, Rose, I can read her very well, and I know instantly when something's not right. Sometimes I'm not even aware of what I'm reading. I can just look and go, she's not right. And then it might be 24 hours later, I see something physical and I'm like, oh, and it's actually a little bit scary because you're like, that wasn't there yesterday, but yesterday I knew she wasn't right. And so I think it's, once you know your dog, trust your gut. And this is where we say, isn't it, all the time, advocate for your dog. So stand up for your dog, protect your dog, and do what you need to do for your dog. And I think it is, every dog is so unique. And, you know, for some dogs, they might start panting quite heavily when they're feeling stressed, but other dogs, that's not the thing they do. Some dogs get really fidgety. So it is learning those little nuances.
And I think it's also about, if you use as an emotional temperature gauge what okay looks like. So rather than like, how do I know what this looks like unless I see this? Instead, learn what, like, shall we say, normal, in inverted commas, looks like for your dog. And if it's like going away from normal, it's like, what's causing the away from normal behavior in this situation? It's that, but it's also as well, and this is probably a bugbear of mine, people will watch a dog in a certain situation and say, oh, that dog's scared. And I know that dog's not scared. I know that dog does that every single time it does that thing. Like, and it's that not reading somebody else's dog, because pretty much unless you know the dog and its experiences and why it's behaving the way it is, you are guessing at best why its behavior is the way it is.
So many times when I go out to work with behaviour cases, So many times the dogs have previously been misdiagnosed. They've been labelled with aggression where they're not aggressive, they're frustrated. They've been labelled with fear aggression when they're not. They're just, let's just say some dogs are just really not interested. Some dogs are so neutral about other dogs, they just couldn't care less and they just want their space. And that's completely cool. And actually, I had this conversation with a client this week who was worried that her dog isn't into people. Like, it's not aggressive, but it doesn't like strangers, basically. And her dog is absolutely fine. He just isn't into loads of people being around him, and he's not into having strangers approaching him. And I said, that doesn't make him a bad dog, and it doesn't mean he's aggressive, and it doesn't mean he's fearful. He just doesn't care less, and he doesn't want that attention. That's okay. That's your dog. And I think it's sometimes people are trying to get the dog that they want instead of loving the dog that they have, appreciating the dog that they have for who that dog is, and working with that dog. It's not all people are the sort of people that want to go to the pub on a rowdy night out. Not all people enjoy crowded concerts. Dogs are the same. They have things that they tolerate, they have things that they love, and they have things that they don't like. And we can't push them into being who they're not. That doesn't mean we can't help them, support them, and educate them, but we have to sometimes just take a step and go, this is the dog that you are, and this is how we're going to live our lives together.
This happens, I see this, like I've talked about this before on the podcast, with like my uncle's, he trains his dog. And when you go there, I'm like, let me go throw a dummy for them. And he's like, they won't work for you. And I'm like, yes, if I throw a dummy, every dog will go after it. And he's like, they won't work for you. And I'm calling their name and I'm making sounds and I'm tapping the dummy, and they either sitting down watching the world or they're looking at him. And it's like I don't exist. It's a little bit off-putting. But he's trained them to be completely uninterested in everything other than what he says to do, so that when he goes out like on a shoot, they pay attention to him. And I'm like, well, really, I do what that really annoying person in the park does, where I'm like a performing clown trying to get them to look at me. Like there's this need, when really I should be like, that's incredible. How did you do that? And I find that a little bit like after we've had the puppy consultation and what I do with Arthur now, I've sort of started that in the fact that everything is about, please ignore Arthur, every single person around you, because it's nothing to do with you. And the answer to that will then be, I'll have a dog where I can take him anywhere and he's not going to be pulling me around like a lunatic to go say hello to 17 different people sitting in a coffee shop, which I will be glad of. But sometimes we don't see why we're training the emotional response out of the dog that way, do we?
100%. And this even goes into how misunderstood the word socialization is as well, because people always think their dog's got to be social, it's got to meet everyone, it's got to be happy to be stroked by everyone, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. And it's like, no. What works for the dog? So last week, when I knew that Rose wasn't great, I actually had a client scheduled to work with me who has a dog who has some fear aggression issues. And Rose is an incredible dog. And because she's so neutral with people and dogs, sometimes if the situation is right, I use her to help me gauge another dog and to help another dog learn how to be neutral with another dog. And I had a client booked, and because she was off, I actually contacted that client and I said, I'm really sorry, but we're going to need to reschedule that because my dog's not right at the moment. So it wouldn't be fair on her to be put in a situation where she potentially could have negative reactions from another dog because she's not in a good space right now. And I'm going to book a vet appointment. I need to get a check. And so we'll need to reschedule this appointment until when she's okay to be in that position again. So dogs are so incredible and so unique, and they can help other dogs. And I used to do it with Indy. Indy was an amazing dog for some behaviour cases. But with Rose, because I knew she was off, it would have been very wrong to put her in that situation to help with a dog that maybe potentially might have reacted negatively toward her. And when I say that, just to be very clear, I never put my dogs in a situation where they're going to be in trouble or danger ever. What I do is very specific and very unique to certain cases. And we've been doing it like that for 10 years. So yeah, anyway, it's few and far between, but just a little caveat on that there. But yeah, so I rearranged that session because it would have been unfair to put my dog in that situation. But how often do owners look at that and think, well, actually, my dog's just recovering from illness, or my dog's just recovering from surgery, or my dog had a bad experience yesterday? And how often does that make them then think about the next day and go, so actually tomorrow, maybe you don't need to be put in that situation. We expect our dogs to just roll with the punches and do what we want them to do, when actually, just like people, sometimes they can't do that. And I think this is where reading your dog, in your dog's emotions, behavior, and everything that goes alongside that, we can make better choices for our dogs.
So how do you think, I know for myself, how to be emotionally aware. Let's take gun dog training out of it now. I'm trained to be emotionally aware. I'm trained to teach other people how to be emotionally aware. And that's all great. But I think when we're with our dogs, we are so focused on our dogs and what they are doing, we sometimes forget to be emotionally aware of our own behavior. And that, without doubt, has this effect we're on about, be it good or bad. You know, like my father used to say to me, if I've argued with my wife, I'm leaving the dogs in the kennel. And he used to say with far more swear words than that, but it'd be true. It'd be like, I leave them alone because I know my mindset is not there. But how can we reset the emotional energy in a session, both for ourselves and the dogs, whether that be positive or negative? How do we just go, oh, this is not the response I want to show the dog. Let's change that.
Yeah, I think this is where being very aware of, are we feeling more frustrated than usual? Are we feeling anxious, more anxious than usual? Is something else on our minds? And I think this is where our mindset stuff on the society group is so important, because it talks about mindset, you know, with Emma's sessions, talks about mindset so much. But for me, I'm just thinking like, day to day, it's just being aware, are you present and in the moment with your dog, or have you got other stuff on your mind, or is there something worrying you that's actively interfering? And so many times I've gone out with my dog to have a training session, and then I've got there and something's happened or something's playing on my mind, so I'm like, actually, instead of doing that, I'm just going to do this instead. Let's just have a bit of fun with my dog. And actually, then by having a bit of fun with my dog first, sometimes then I do go on to have the training session, because having that bit of fun brings me out of that feeling. And the same goes for the dog. We can use play with our dog to change the dog's emotions as well. So that's something that I've really been embracing this year and last year, is using play much more to change the mindset of the dog, but also being aware that play with my dog also changes my mindset. And so not only can I change how I feel, but I can change how my dog feels. And so if I can't do that, don't push on, give yourself a break. But yes, use play as a way to help you and your dog get on the same page. Like, I just find that incredible. But that's a whole another podcast in itself, isn't it, really?
Yeah, without a doubt. I don't know how many posts I put up where people say, I worked on my mindset and then I went and did this masterclass and ... And it always goes, I put my head on the right way. And then I went and trained and my dog was amazing. And I'm like, there is no coincidence there. It starts with you, it passes to the dog responds because you were in the right space. And the result is you get the result you want. And
Yeah.
once people get that path, it's like big tech, they know how to train. They know when to step back. They know when to push forward. They know what the dog is saying. You see that being in tune type of thing that we've been talking about all the way throughout this. I think I say this quite a lot, but I see if you agree. I think we're really unique in that, though, aren't we? We like go as a group. We are not just dog trainers. We teach you to be better, to be a better trainer for your dog.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what also is unique is the way that we are so open-minded to different techniques, to different approaches, to what works for the dog and what works for the handler. Like, it's all very well saying, you know, what works for one dog won't necessarily work for another dog. But if you add to that what works for one human won't necessarily work for another human, you put those two things together, that takes a lot of open-mindedness and a lot of being very unique to actually be open enough to kind of go down both those avenues. But then when we just talked, just like we did, about how using play can connect those two beings together and change the mindset behind both. I mean, that's just a little bit mind-blowing, isn't it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we go back to the title of the podcast, the energy we bring is the behavior we get. That's mimicked in our work with our dogs, our work with one another, our work as a community. Like, we all bring the energy of, let's get the best out of this. And then, like you said, with the play stuff, you saying to the dog, let's just have fun for a minute and just take the pressure off. So I can laugh at you being goofy, and you can get really happy about me laughing that you were getting goofy, and know and look up and go a little bit like, ah, oh, mum's in a good place, let's go. And then that is such a different place for us all to start from.
100%, 100%. If everybody can just take that one thing on board from this podcast, I think everyone would feel much more not happier, but relaxed about what they're doing.
Definitely.
Maybe happy.
The dogs are definitely telling without a doubt, if you take a pill, we'll take a chill pill too. Thank you so much for yet again another, we call them podcast episodes. They're masterclasses. Like, literally every time we do one of these, I'm like, ooh, do I just give this to the members and nobody else? Because they're like solid, pure gold. Remember, your dog doesn't need you to be perfect. They need you to be present, and they need you to be positive, and they need you to be aware of what you are doing. Calm starts with you, and the connection follows, just as Claire's been discussing. The connection will come if you come to the relationship with the right attitude. If you're ready to explore this even further, if you haven't, go and get hold of our Calm Dog Blueprint. It is absolutely fabulous. It will help you to chill out and to help you train your dog to chill out too. I've put the link in the show notes, so it's there for you. So until next time, take a breath, trust the bond, keep showing up, and you'll get there one steady step at a time. See you next episode.